What fictional character is it in fiction but would function terribly in real-life civilization? James Bond would get shot and killed immediately. The name is Bond, James Bo. Most dudes from romantic comedy movies would probably be getting charged with stalking and harassment, because rarely did relentlessly pursuing a woman's non-existing affections result in her suddenly changing her mind. This bothers me a lot. If you head over to Nice Guys, you see a lot of guys who think that persistence and grand gifts will win a girl's heart. I think a lot of guys and girls have a warped view of dating because of how it's portrayed. The Harry Potter universe would be cool in real life, but those kids got an awful education, barely knowing basic arithmetic. Also, Hogwarts would get closed down pretty quickly under child endangerment laws. I just crushed my own dreams. Yeah, there seems to be this presumption in the wizarding community that there will always be a stay-at-home parent or servant, in the case of the wealthier families, who's expected to homeschool their kids up until the age of 11. Considering how few wizards know anything about the Muggle world. See Arthur Weasley, a Muggle enthusiast who works in a Muggle-centric job but barely understands their culture. It seems unlikely that many put their kids through the Muggle primary school system this year or so. What's a single parent supposed to do? I mean, a ministry salary seems okay. Again, the Weasleys are able to scrape by with a household of 9 people on one salary that's considered meager by ministry standards. But a low-skilled job in the wizarding private sector, you'd probably need both parents to work. I read a fan theory that admittedly probably doesn't hold much water when you really go at it, that Arthur is basically playing up his inability to use Muggle technology to make Harry feel more at home and needed to explain or feel like he's not totally isolated by having something unique to himself. Tom Nook would go bankrupt in a heartbeat. You can straight up neglect paying off your loan for as long as you want. Tom gets a lot of shit for forcing you to upgrade your house and adding a hefty price tag. And yeah, he's a money-hungry asshole sometimes, but he's not a very good businessman. If it weren't for the villager being a good citizen, his little shack store would have gone bankrupt in days. Dr.House from House MD. The way he does things, that shit would not fly. His ass would be at best fired, at worst in jail. That's addressed a lot in the show though. He has problems with new hospital management, police, ends up in a mental institution, goes to prison. It's a recurring theme throughout the series. I think the better point is would lose his medical license and never be able to work as a medical professional for eternity. Dracula, can you imagine the administrative burden of being immortal? There was a movie, The Man from Earth. I figure he could just do that. Move every 10 to 20 years or so. Should be pretty easy after a while. Really enjoyed this movie. However, like many movies, it glosses over how difficult it is in the modern world, in the US at least, to create a fake identity that will pass any level of real scrutiny. Flutterfear. Literally any superhero vigilantes are still illegal. Mr. Sansweet didn't ask to be saved. Mr. Sansweet didn't want to be saved, and the consequences of Mr. Incredible's actions, so-called, causes him daily pain. You didn't save my life, you ruined my death. I am a huge comic book dork, but to be honest, the only one I find remotely plausible is the Punisher. Not for his backstory, but the premise of his vigilantism. A first-class Special Forces officer gone rogue and declaring unconventional war on organized crime. Of course, he'd probably be dead in a month. Link from Legend of Zelda. You can't just walk into people's houses and smash their furniture in real life. I thought we were in the outskirts of Detroit. Fucker smashed my vase. Can't have shit in Detroit. Peter Griffin. Imagine him as your neighbor. To the Petercopter. Petercopter crashes and destroys Joe's yard. Joe, how do you afford these things? Quote, to the Hinden Peter. No. Roadrunner. Slower than a coyote in real life. Sad meep. Doc Brown from Back to the Future. He's making deals with terrorists for weapons-grade plutonium, and his only employee is an underage boy whose duties include recording him alone after midnight in a mall parking lot. I feel like the FBI would put him on multiple lists and just send him to Guantanamo Bay. Not it higher high, monsieur. Black Panther in real life, he got shot. Batman. I mean, he can just continue beating up the mentally ill in our society. Superheroes in general. When they first arrived on the cultural scene in was the 1930s and secret identities made sense. These days there are DNA tests, metadata filters, face recognition technology, and a 24-hour news cycle. It would take almost no time for the public to speculate who Batman is, and at that point the Joker, Penguin, Riddler, Gene Neural mob boss would blow him at a benefit or board meeting or his house. The only way it would work is the way the MCU presents it: I am Iron Man, and have the backing of the government, or governments as represented via S.H.I.E.L.D., or alternatively have no life outside of being a pseudo-military figure like Captain America. Detective Conan. It just doesn't work that someone is exposed to so many murder cases. I wouldn't say it's strange that he solves so many cases, but that he stumbles into them almost every day. Seriously, at least Rand has to be traumatized by now. I feel like despite his physical age, someone has got to start suspecting him of being involved in something fucky sooner or later. LMAO. Goku, motherfucker, is like a magnet for villains who want to kill everyone and blow up the planet. He's also a man-child with the ability to blow up planets. I don't think he'd be good for the world as a whole. Any serialized TV detective. The vast majority of shows surrounding detectives involve murders, and they're solving one murder per week. They're generally the person working the case. Let's say you have a 13-episode season 1 per year. In that you've got at least 12 murders. Accounting for a bottle episode. That's one murder a month. The caseload for court preparation for a murder is heavy. Very heavy. On top of that, there's disclosure and loose ends to hunt down. Even if you get a confession, you're still chasing down loose ends just to square the case away. While you're doing that, there's court attendance for old cases, further disclosure, administrative nightmares, and so on. All of those serialized detectives would be locked in an office and told, "Love your work. You're staying here until it's finished." The paperwork montage in Hot Fuzz is a fantastic way of addressing this problem, monsieur. Barney Miller was a police detective show that was shot exclusively in the office while the detectives filled out paperwork and brought in the occasional outsider for an interview. In later years they added some locations outside the office, but it might be one of their homes or a cramped lobby. At the time, it was considered to be the most realistic police show on the air. With things being the way they are in the America right now, and knowing the type of man Steve Rogers is, I would fully expect American police, encouraged by Donald Trump, to attempt to beat Captain America's ass. Wasn't it addressed in one of the movies? In The Winter Soldier, maybe? I think he mentioned that he fought the Nazis to prevent the situation in the movie from happening, and that he'll do it again. I can't remember. I need to re-watch them again. Honestly, yeah, that movie is entirely about Hydra infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. from the inside out, and all of it comes to a head after decades of secrecy. The underlying theme of corruption is painfully relevant. It always has been, especially within our government. Winter Soldier holds a special place in the MCU for me by having one of the more interesting and action-packed stand-alone plots. Greater than to attempt to beat Captain America's ass. Before we get started, does anyone want to get out? Okay, I'm confused. A few years ago you went, "Hail Hydra," and now we're supposed to kill you. You Hydra, fam? Quote, maybe Hydra only feels confident enough to reveal itself because they think Cap is with them since Avengers in 2012. LMAO. Any Jedi that realizes that a normal metal bullet would go right through their lightsaber and barely lose any speed and also become molten metal. The war with the Mandalorians all over again. Slug throwers are a thing, it is. And the Force is still pretty strong. Can the Force stop bullets? Yep, they could. You just need to hope you sense it in time. The Mandalorians used bullets to extreme effect during their wars with the Jedi. Because most Jedi couldn't stop bullets, they'd revert to trying to deflect, and instead get a spray of molten lead directly to the face. Mr. Bean. He would be arrested immediately for his acts and probably wouldn't survive prison. Pretty sure he should be in some kind of sheltered housing. Wouldn't they put him in a mental institution? James T. Kirk. That man must have multiple cases of space AIDS. Aren't there space condoms? You really think Kirk would have used space condoms? Well, he's not space stupid. Doom guy. He would think this comparable paradise is an illusion and just kill everything. I see no problem here. As long as my death isn't having a metal gauntlet thrust through my chest, and it's a clean headshot, I'm fine with this. Michael Scott from The Office. He'd get cancelled. We're all homos, homo sapiens. Little kid lover. That way people will know exactly where my priorities are at. Any superhero destroying the city think they saved it while hundreds of people are either dead or injured from projectiles flying everywhere. Then most buildings are collapsing or on the verge of it. Almost every disastrous superhero confrontation has an incredibly obvious alternative state that's worse. The hero doesn't intervene at all, and the villain wreaks even more havoc, because either nobody else can stop him, or because stopping him with conventional means will cause even more collateral damage. That's why I've never understood this. Criticize Monsieur comic book writers can be very lazy, but this is one of their tried and true layups. I think that's mostly just Superman and the various Marvel guys. At least the Avengers addressed it, which I was pleasantly surprised with. Hell, they had a whole movie based around the salvage and repair dudes turning evil. I love John Constantine, but I don't think they'd ever have let him out of the psych ward. Superman. The physics of his abilities would kill people. Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory would not function well at all IRL. He'd be unemployable and living with his mom forever. Bazinga. Luna Lovegood. Look Luna, I don't care if it's what the Nargles want. You have to take vaccinations, damn it. No, you didn't get abducted by aliens. That's just a rash. Sterling Archer. I have a feeling that so-called high-functioning alcoholics are just alcoholics that haven't deteriorated completely yet. They claim to function as an excuse to keep drinking. Andy from Parks and Recreation. I'm not sure about that. He got his life together by season 3 or 4. Maybe he would have died while living in the pit though, rather than Leslie discovering Andy almost getting buried alive in the pit. The pit gets filled off-screen successfully and Andy no longer appears on the show. It then becomes a well-known fan theory that Andy was buried alive in the pit. He kept appearing around Anne without ever explaining where he was living after getting kicked out, and stops showing up as soon as the pit gets filled. Dexter. He knows how the police work, is meticulous as hell, and relatively attractive. I don't see him having any trouble at all fitting in. This is assuming we are referring to the TV Dexter, of course. Book Dexter is a hot mess that should not have done as well as he did. He'd be caught immediately on how he orders a torphine alone. I was enjoying the books until the third one, when the author jumps the shark and greater than makes Dexter's dark passenger a supernatural entity. Less than I couldn't take it seriously after that. My innocent ass thought you were talking about Dexter's Lab. He'd be king of Silicon Valley by now. The serial killer, not the kid. The Avengers. They would have spent rest of their life trying to prove their innocence for the damage they caused, while trying to save the humanity after NYC and Ultron. They would be caught up in the politics and stupidity PF people. I sort of understand the Ultron and Sokovia thing, but NYC was absolutely none of their faults. S.H.I.E.L.D. decided to experiment on the Tesseract, Loki, and Alien. stole it and opened a portal over New York. Then the board of directors tried to nuke the city. The Avengers saved thousands, if not millions of lives by being there. This we know, but not the general public. And politicians have a skill to turn around the facts and mislead people. That's why they may have to go through a trial, either in a court or due to the protest by people. Still though, the nuke, if someone brought that up when they were being made sign the accords, the movie would have been very different. You've caused too much damage. For example, here is footage taken from New York. You sent a fucking nuke to blow up the city. Tony had to stop it from hitting. Quote, yeah, but you broke some stuff. But the nuke, quote, didn't break anything. But it still signed the fucking paper. All Avengers are now against the signing of the accords and fight it together. They end up not signing it by the end of the movie, 'cause the good guys win. And it has no effect on the rest of the saga. I feel like that misses the point a bit. The message is, it doesn't matter if we slaughter millions. We are asterisk elected officials asterisk, aka the lapdogs of the wealthy. The accords are just another attempt to weaponize superpowers. In the context of American rugged individualism, think of it what you will. It was very clear who the bad guys in Civil War were. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.